In this video, I'm going to show you how to groom one of these Streptocarpus. In fact, what I'm going to do is actually show you how to groom 3 of them. Each one is a little different, and you'll learn something new as I go through each of these straps and clean them up. How often do you do grooming? Well, that really depends on how much time you have. If you've got a smaller collection, what I would probably do is once a week come through and pull off all the old flowers, and then every 3 to 4 weeks do a more thorough grooming. I have a large collection and I have almost 200 plants this size, and I don't get to them very quickly. So in my case, I groom them maybe every 3 or 4 months. I do pull off the old dead flowers more frequently, but a thorough grooming doesn't happen that often. Let me introduce the 3 straps I'm going to use in this video. None of them are named, they're all my seedlings. This is numbered 162. Once a seedling starts to flower, if I think it has potential, I'll give it a number, and you can come over to my website, streptocarpus.ca, and see all of those. Then I grow them for a while, and then I decide if they're worth naming. And only a few of the numbered ones will actually end up being named. I think this will be one of them. I love the color, it flowers really well, and I really like the 2 white bars it has going down on the lower petal. But we'll see. We'll have to grow it a little longer and see how it does. This is also a seedling, number 157. Believe it or not, this is a seedling from a pink Streptocarpus. Its flowers are okay, nothing real special about them, but it flowers like crazy. This thing has been flower for at least a year and has anywhere from about 25 to 50 blooms at any given time. It's worth keeping just for the flower power alone. Now this monstrosity is 108. It's got huge leaves and it was a big plant. It's going downhill a little bit, and I'll explain why in a minute. It has some pretty nice flowers here. Nice ruffles, nice coloration, and it blooms fairly well. My favorite tools for grooming a strap is a set of tweezers, little scissors. Now they could be a little bigger than these, but I happen to have these in my plant room, so that's what I use. And then if I'm dividing anything, I also like to use a steak knife. Now if we have a look at this plant, it's very one-sided as far as the leaves go. Nice and large here, and nothing on this side. You might notice that some of these larger leaves are a bit yellow. The newer leaves are quite green. That's quite normal. As these leaves get older, they age and they start going yellow. The reason they're going yellow is that the plant is taking nitrogen back out of these plants and using it to grow new leaves and flowers. Now, as you can see, it's been flowering a lot. These are all old flowers here, some seed pods on here. Lots of flowers still on it, and that's taking a lot of energy out of this plant. With that number of flowers, it has a hard time growing new leaves. Discarding some of these old ones, taking the nutrients out, and trying its best to flower and grow new leaves at the same time. The first thing I do is I go around and cut off all the old flower stems. Try to get in there as deep as you can without cutting any of the leaves. I also look at the flowers to see how old they are. These look pretty good, so I'm going to leave them all. Now this plant has made some seed pods and they're developing, and since I really like the plant, I'd like to collect some of these, so I'm going to leave the seed pods on here. Growing seed pods also takes a lot of energy, so only leave them if you really want the seeds. This stem here has 1 seed pod, so I'll leave that. This stem down here is forming 2 seed pods, and that's too much. I'll just take one of those off. Now I have 4 seed pods coming, and that's a lot of seeds. So I think I'll take another one of these off. We don't need that. So flower falling off, we might as well get rid of it. And now I have a look at the leaves. These actually look pretty good, except for the fact that these two larger ones are yellow. So then I'll have a look inside here to see if these leaves are making new buds. And they're not. They're finished flowering. So the plant is saying, look, I don't need this anymore. I'm not going to use it for growing or for photosynthesis because I'm taking the nitrogen out of here. And I'm not going to use it for flowering. So it's not doing the plant much good at this point. We might as well get rid of it. And I cut them as far down as I can without damaging the crown. And I tend to cut through the main vein and then just pull the rest off. Same with this leaf. It's quite old already, so we might as well get rid of it. This is an older leaf too, but it's still flowering. So this flower stem here is coming out of this leaf, but it looks like that's going to be the last flower. I don't see any buds in here, but I'm going to keep this a little longer. Here's a larger leaf. It's finished flowering, so let's get rid of that one too. The rest of the leaves look pretty good. There's not a lot of brown spotting on them. The edges are green, so we'll leave all of that. I'll look inside here and see if there's any long stems. These are flower stems that I've cut off before, but didn't get them very short. So I'll get rid of some of those as well. Tweezers are good for this sometimes. Come in here and pull off any of the old stuff. So while I was working here, I knocked off a few more flowers. That's okay. I have to now make a decision. Do I want to keep the flowers and enjoy them, or do I want the plant to make more leaves and make more flowers down the road? If I want a larger plant and I want to grow this for future flowers, then I would cut off most of these flowers as well. But I'm not in a big hurry to get a big plant, so I think I'll just leave it the way it is. So that strap's finished. All right, now let's look at my white strap. Still has lots of blooms, but many of these are getting old. And it's been blooming a long time. So what I'm going to do with this plant is I'm going to cut all the blooms off of it. I want to give this plant a bit of a rest. I'll leave this one, and there's numerous new buds coming in here. So within a week or two, it's going to be full of flowers again. One of the reasons I did this is that although this plant seems to be fairly big, it doesn't have a lot of large leaves. Its largest leaves are starting to get quite old, and it doesn't have many replacement leaves coming. By cutting off more of the flowers, it'll make more leaves and it'll grow into a larger, stronger plant. This is an old leaf, but it's still flowering. So I'll leave this, but the tip has gotten quite brown. So I'll cut most of it off. Over here we have a leaf that's completely brown, but if you look at the base, it still has a flower bud coming. This particular clone is just so amazing. Even without a leaf, it's still going to flower on this stem. But I'm going to cut that off, give it a rest. This leaf is getting a little old too, so we'll cut this off. That leaf is still nice. That leaf is nice. So we'll leave those. This leaf has a brown edge here, and I could cut it back, and I think I will. I'll cut it down here. Here's another completely dead one in here. Another one over here. In the middle here is some old stems. So I'll pull those off. Now looking at the plant, I still think it has too many buds coming. so I'm going to trim some more off. I really would like to have this turn into a larger plant. A lot of times we have to make a decision. Do we do this for us because we want more blooms, so we leave the blooms? Or do we want to grow a better plant for long-term growth? And in this case, this has been blooming for so many months, I'm going to give it a good rest. And I think this one is finished. Now we come to the one that needs the most work. You'll notice that this is a bicolor, so the upper petals are a different color than the lower petals. Most of the time when you have this kind of coloration, the stigma is deformed and it doesn't make seeds. Now up here we did get some growth that I thought might turn into a seed pod. And sometimes, even though the seed pod isn't developing properly, it may have a few seeds in there. And that's why I've kept these here, and I'm going to keep them. I want to see if I can get seeds out of this plant. All the other flowers have to come off. This plant doesn't look very good, and it's been neglected. It was flowering really well for a while. Then it got shoved to the back of the flowering bench and pretty much ignored. A lot of these leaves are yellow, some are really brown, and I think what happened was it just wasn't getting watered enough. So our job now is to try and get this plant back in good shape. I want some nice large leaves, and we're going to get rid of all the flowers for now. Now I have a look at the leaves. You can see they're quite large, but they're very brown. Big brown edge here. Even when we turn them over, they're a very dark color. It just doesn't look like a good, healthy leaf. In fact, this one over here is unbelievably dark. So we're going to get rid of all of these old leaves. So come into the base, as deep as you can, cut that midrib, and then pull it off. On this leaf, the tip's a little brown, so I'll cut that back a bit. Same with this leaf. Then I'll come in here and I'll cut off these old flower stems too. Try to get as much of that brown material out of here. In the center here, I've got lots of nice dark green leaves coming, and that will make a new good bushy plant. But this plant's a bit unusual in that at the base, it's also starting to grow what looks like small seedlings. But in fact, what these are new crowns which are growing from underneath the soil. Sometimes these straps will leaf out quite far into the potting media and then grow up. I think they look like small seedlings, but they're actually attached to the old root that's in there. So I'm just going to leave those. In another 2 or 3 months, if I wanted to propagate this plant, these would be very easy to cut off and turn into new plants. One of the things that I haven't shown you yet is a flower that's caught in here. Sometimes when these flowers start developing, the bud head gets trapped inside these leaves, and then you end up with a very crooked stem. And then they try to flower in here somewhere. Those will never be nice looking flowers. So anytime you see that sort of a problem, just cut them off. It won't correct itself. You'll just have this crippled stem here, and the plant will be wasting energy to flower way inside here where you won't appreciate it. So cut all of those off. So 108 is ready to go back on the plant stand. And I'm going to give it a bit more light. The other advantage of cutting these larger leaves off is that they were shading these small ones. One of these very large leaves was actually attached right here. And when these are growing under lights, this large leaf is shading the smaller ones underneath. And I can tell that in part because these are very soft leaves, very fine leaves compared to these, which are coarse. These are getting a much higher light level than these. So what I'm going to do is position it under my lights so I get a good amount of light here to make these guys grow, and at the same time they will form larger, stiffer leaves, which will be healthier for the plant. So don't be afraid to cut things off the plant. These streps are really tough plants, and you can do almost anything to them. Cut off whatever you don't want, cut leaves back, doesn't matter. Won't harm the plant in the least. Now after this treatment, I don't do anything special. They go back under my lights, they get regular watering, regular fertilizing, nothing special. In a few weeks, they'll all be blooming again. I put together a whole library of videos to show you how to grow straps, and you can get to that library right here. It'll tell you everything you know about growing and propagating Streptocarpus. Happy gardening!